Hi guys! Yesterday I promised that I was gonna do either herbal remedies or herbal teas today. So I thought because of all the work that we were doing from home with homeschooling children right now, we'll just start off with herbal teas. There's less stuff for me to prepare. Now, as I promised yesterday, I would give you options for getting teas that you grow from home, from your balconies, and buying the leaves or the dried leaves as well. So today what I did was I actually cut up some herbs from the garden. The way I've done it and what I usually do is, for example, like these are peppermints, and if you see how I've cut them up, I've cut them with like their vine, their roots. If I was in a garden at home, these things would have actually rooted themselves onto the soil, and that's how your peppermint proliferates, through their roots, through their stems actually, through their stems. The stems would have like little roots, and then they would stick themselves. I've just got a video going here that's closer. I don't know if you guys can see this, but basically on the stems of the peppermint, you will see little bits that are poking out, which are actually the roots that attach to the ground. So I pulled it out only because I have my peppermint here in a balcony, and being that it's a balcony, I need to make sure that it doesn't overflow too much. It doesn't grow down too much. So I want it in the pots, not really on the ground, because it's harder when you don't have a proper garden. So what I'm just gonna do is I'm just gonna cut off the rest of the stems. I don't really need that. With peppermint, I don't mind the little soft stems, and I just add that into what I'm preparing. But the browner, darker colored stems, I actually get rid of that. So darker colored stems I get rid of, lighter colored stems I keep. And this is just my water, and I'm just going to be washing my herbs here because I just literally cut it from the garden. And with the darker stems, with these darker stems here, I'm actually just going to remove the leaves and put it straight into the water, just so that it gets rinsed a bit before we use it, depending on where you're growing it. So I'm not growing it in a garden, as I said, it's just in the balcony. I don't really need to wash it too much, but when I am harvesting from my garden in Canberra, the closer obviously to the soil the roots are, or depending on how they're crawling, will dictate how much washing your herbs are gonna need. Now, if you don't have plants in your balcony, you don't plant in your garden, another option is obviously to buy them fresh from the shops. It's easy to buy fresh peppermint, fresh rosemary. What else do I usually get from parsley is another one that you can get from the shops. Basil, here in Jakarta, and even when I was in Australia, I remember when I just got back home, when I just started my garden, I actually bought the basil plant from the grocery. Not the best option if you're planting outside in the garden, and the reason for that is when you're buying indoors in an air-conditioned place and you're planting it outside, it'll die because the plant's not used to it. But if you're wanting to put it on your windowsill in your kitchen, that might be a good option. Again, back home, back in Australia, if you want to buy plants for your garden, it's not a difficult thing to do. You could actually just go to Bunnings and get it from places like Bunnings. They got their plant section, they've got their nursery section, and I got a lot of my herbs from there. So back in Australia, I've got thyme, I've got rosemary, I've got oregano, I've got whatever the other stuff that I bought from there, coriander, basil. So a lot of this stuff to start off with, you can actually get there. Anything else that's a bit more difficult to grow or a bit more specialized, you get from the other nurseries. So I live in Canberra in Australia, and the nursery that I go to is the one in, God, I forgot the name of the place. That's bad. Where Cockington Green used to be. So if any of you remember where that is, hey Sophia, how are you? James, kamusta na? Aziza, how are you? Monica, Abdul, thanks for watching, guys. So anyway, all I'm doing right now is just going through the herbs that I bought, washing them. Washing them is really important. Now, if you are getting store-bought herbs, you obviously want to wash them very, very well. I talked about how I wash my herbs that I buy from the markets or the stores. I usually soak them in 11.5 pH first. And that pulls out the pesticides that's used for the plants if they had pesticides. For those of you that own a Kangen machine, you know what I'm talking about. 11.5 pH is the high alkaline pH water. If you were with me yesterday, I showed you how I collected them and put them in this container. So I have this all the time, and I use it for usually my herbs and veggies that I bought from the shops. The ones that I grow from home, I don't use pesticides, so I don't really have to use that. The other thing that I would recommend, especially during this time where we have to be very careful about what people have touched, we also have to be careful just in case they're carrying the virus. You will want to actually have a sprayer bottle of the 2.5 pH, which kills E. coli, salmonella, kills a lot of bacteria and virus, and just spray it on what you bought. So if you remember, again, yesterday I had this one, and this is where I usually put my 2.5 pH. It's good hand sanitizer. It doesn't dry your skin like all the others because it doesn't have any chemicals in it. Everyone's got hand sanitizers, but not everyone's got an antibacterial wash or spray that they can spray on their produce. So those of you that have the Kangen machine, that's a great plus, right? Okay, so when you're harvesting or when you're buying, make sure that you're only getting the stuff that you need. Let's not be one of the hoarders or those people that panic buy and you know, buy everything so that no one else can buy for their health or for their families. So only get what you're going to use. The rule of thumb with herbs, especially when you're going to be using them as tea, is 1 teaspoon is plenty. So 1 teaspoon in terms of when you've chopped it up. And if you're picking them from your garden, I would usually tell the children, you don't need a whole fistful. So, you know, you put them in your hands. Especially if you've got your own garden, you actually can just remove the leaves straight away from the stems in the garden and then just use the stems as mulch. You know, you chop it up, put them back in the soil, and yeah, just make sure you have enough, not too much. So the more people you have in your family, obviously the more leaves you'll be needing. But again, you know, a little goes a long, long way. And it doesn't make your herbal remedy less potent. What's most important, rather than quantity, is the quality of your herbs. So if you're planting your own herbs, that's a plus. If you're watering your herbs well, you're not using pesticides, that's definitely a plus. If you're putting organic fertilizers, again, another plus to how much more potent your remedies will be. Okay, so as you see, there's mostly stems. I was really cutting and cleaning up my balcony by trimming my herbs. You see, when you don't trim your herbs, they don't proliferate. The more you trim them, the more they can proliferate. And the other reason I don't like overdoing harvesting of herbs is because obviously you need to make sure that there's enough on the branches that's left for your herb to continue growing and continue proliferating. I don't own a kettle, so I'm boiling my water there at the back. I don't know if you can see it from the angle. So I'm just keeping an eye out for it so I can turn it off. And that we're going to be using that. We're not going to be cooking our herbs. When you're making tea, you just put it in hot water and you let the water pull out the medicinal properties of your leaves. So In my garden here, again, if you've been following my previous videos, I have peppermint, I've got rosemary, I've got yarrow. And if you're wondering, and if you haven't caught it earlier, I live in Indonesia. So those of you that live in Indonesia, you can grow all these things. They're not difficult to grow here. I wasn't able to grow echinacea. I was trying to grow echinacea here, but the seeds that I got from my plant in Australia did not grow. But yeah, definitely this ones that I use. So I'm gonna turn off my hot water. So that's my peppermint. Next up is my rosemary. Rosemary is an amazing herb. So when you're organizing your tea, when you want to make good tea, know what you're wanting to do. Are you wanting to boost your family's health? Are you doing it so that they're thinking clearer? Are you getting rid of a headache? What is it that you're trying to do? Each herb that you have in your garden or that we have around us has its own has its benefits. I just love the smell of rosemary. Just really love it. Rosemary is a really good herb because it's great for the nervous system. It's great for children that are trying to learn from home. So those of you that are homeschooling your children, rosemary tea is always really good for them. Helps with migraine headaches. And yeah, basically helps with concentration. So that's what I have here. I've got my rosemary because I need to help the children with their concentration. Get them to be finishing up the stuff that I want them to finish up for school. Well, their teachers want them to finish up. Rosemary, you can use the stem, but I really don't usually do that. I usually have enough rosemary to not need the stem. But you know what you can do with the stems for the rosemary? You can chop them up and put them in like a little bag. Put it under your pillow because it smells so good. It's gonna give you a good night's sleep. Or you can just hang it. You know how what they used to do when they were drying herbs in the olden days is they would actually hang this in their kitchen. So that's another good way of doing it if you're wanting to dry your herbs. We'll talk about drying herbs more tomorrow when we talk about making your herbal remedy. When you're just doing a tea, not necessary to dry your herbs. That being said, if we were back home, and for those of you that have big gardens and have so much of one single herb that you don't know what to do with them, yes, you can dry them and then you can pack them well. I like packing mine in paper or in glass. Now, that being said, because we travel every 3 years, we move homes every 3 years, we move countries every 3 years. I've had to pack some of them in bags. I have to say they're not the best way of packing because again, you don't know the temperature in storage, in the flight or what have you. And it's better to protect your herbs. It's easier to protect your herbs in paper and in glass. Either way, you do have to dry them very well. The other thing that I've done is if my option was really plastic, I usually wrap them in paper before I put them inside the plastic. Okay, so this is still my rosemary that I'm putting in here. Some more peppermint that have fallen off the stem, and my yarrow. So as I was saying before, and if you haven't been watching the other videos, yarrow is a really good herb for the circulation. It's really good for your blood. It's also good for stopping nosebleeds. I love yarrow for that one. Yarrow is again another good herb if you're suffering from hemorrhoids or you've got cardiovascular issues, because yarrow just balances your blood flow, your blood pressure. I've got a thing coming up here. So with yarrow, I use everything because the yarrow stem is so soft. Really, really soft. Again, so look at it closely. That's how it looks like. It looks a little bit like dill. Smells different though. Smells different from dill. Yeah, dill has got like a sweet, spicy type smell. Yarrow isn't that way. In Australia, when I have my yarrow in my garden, I have to say it hasn't happened here yet. Yarrow does flower, and I love the flower of the yarrow. You can have white flowers or slightly pink flowers. I think there's also yellow yarrow. The one that I had in my garden was the white and the pink. So really, really lovely colors. I love herbs. A lot of them do flower. I love the flowers that they bring. It's not, I used to say, it's not like useless flowers. They're flowers that you could actually eat, or, you know, a lot of times their flowers have medicinal value. So I like in my backyard in Canberra, all my plants are plants that you can stick in your mouth and you'll be okay. Now, one thing to remember is, again, only use what you need. You never waste what you've cut and washed, because as long as they're dried, you can wrap them in paper, put them in the fridge, and then use them tomorrow. Now, for those of you, again, who have big gardens, who harvest huge amounts of herbs, you can use a dehydrator if you've got one. Lay the leaves down, and all you have to do is just lay the leaves and put space in between them, put them in the dehydrator, and it dehydrates. Obviously, it'll be more than just that, but I'm not planning on dehydrating anything. If you did not have a dehydrator, you could also use something similar, like you could use like a stainless steel tray. You could put baking paper on top of it, lay your leaves there. The baking paper just helps absorb the rest of the liquid, so it's easier to dry the herbs. Ideally, you don't want them too wet, so I usually like have them laying on a cloth. I pat them dry. I put them on the tray with the baking paper, and then I put it in very low heat in the oven. Let me know if you want to get the exact instructions for that. I can send them to you. I used to do it through using the oven before, but I find it to be more efficient, and I don't need to keep checking if I use the dehydrator. So it's an easier way of doing it. So now, how much do you need? So I've mixed them up. I've mixed my yarrow, I've mixed my peppermint, and I've mixed my rosemary. If it were just for me, this is enough. You don't need too much. It's just for you. You just need to chop this up in little pieces, and that's all you need. Now, you can use your hands, you can use a knife. I've got the knife here, so I guess might as well use the knife. And it just allows you to get more of the herbs into your tea. The properties come out better. Okay? See, it's not a lot. It really isn't a lot. Okay, so that's it. That's all you need. Now you can put that in a little Chinese pot. Oops, like this one. I've got my little Chinese pot. And when you put it inside the Chinese pot, you just pour the water in to that pot, and you have your tea. You leave it for about 5 minutes, you cover it. But the thing that I love about the Chinese pot is inside, it's got little holes that actually strains the tea, so you don't get all the leaves coming through. Another option is, if you've got more guests, you can put it in a bigger pot. This one's got holes in it as well to strain the tea, but the holes are larger because of the size of the pot, and I guess the way it was made as well. So I would suggest that if you're using a pot like this with the bigger holes, have another little tea strainer. Okay, it's not that difficult. And if you get tea in the water, drink it, chew it. It's good for you. Okay, I actually usually just drink it and chew it. If you're making a big one for the whole family, you could also use a pot. So once you boil the water, like in the case that I've done here, you can just chop up the leaves roughly with your fingers or with a knife. It doesn't really matter. Put it in, cover it, but make sure that when it's in the pot is no longer boiling. It's not turned on. It's on the cooler side of the stove, okay? Because you don't want to cook it. You don't want to overcook your tea. You want the tea to have all the nutrients that you want to be able to get from it. The other thing that I realized is you could actually use a plunger. So you know what? Use what you've got at home. If you want to use a plunger, you can, because a plunger actually separates the tea leaf and, oops, if I can pull it up, and the tea with this one, right? So use a plunger, use what you've got. So I don't usually use a plunger. I love the whole cup experience. I feel like a more genuine tea drinker having it in these containers. But really, it's use what you have. That's the whole idea. Okay, so I've got my water boiling. I actually need a bigger pot because my children are joining me. So if you have questions, let me know. I am just gonna continue chopping and I'm gonna move a little bit closer. Hey Dawn, kamusta na? Hey June, hey Allison, hey Charmaine. The people that have been watching above, sorry, I'll give you a shout out later on. And whatever questions you've got, let me know. I'll check it out as well. I'll try and respond to them while I'm doing this. Otherwise, I will definitely answer it in the chat later today. So again, just roughly, you don't need to do much. 3 people in the house, really, that's enough. Okay? You don't need too much. Now, let's talk about what you should do if you actually don't grow your own herbs in your garden. So if you're not growing your herbs, there are a few options. As I said, you can go to the shops and buy fresh herbs. I've used fresh herbs, so that's all you're gonna do. Buy the herbs and then use it at home. The other thing that you can do is you can actually order dried herbs from wholesalers. Or retailers for that matter. Again, I'm going to have to use Australia as an example because I see it more over there. Actually, the US is as well. You can buy Hilda Hilms. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but she's got really good tea blends and dried tea collections. In Australia, in Canberra, the Hierophant is a really good place to go for your dried leaves. They have different dried leaves in their shops and you choose which one you want. They put it in a, do I have my Hierophant one here? Yes. They put it in a bag like this, label it. So this is calendula flowers. So they give it to you, you get how much you want, 10 grams, 20 grams, I think this is 50 grams. And they just pack it up for you that way so it stays dry. The other companies that I've purchased herbs from is a company in Victoria called Heavenly Herbs. So it's just heavenlyherbs.com.au. You can order your herbs there. I always get the organic herbs from them. And this must have been when I didn't have my own rosemary because it's rosemary herb that I got from them. Now another one that I bought is from an online store called Sunrise Botanicals. Austral Herbs. It's AUSTRAL Herbs. That's the dried leaves that I bought from them. Actually, sorry, it's a bark. It's a St. John's wort. I don't know, it's not a bark, it's a whole plant. St. John's herb. So St. John's is a really good herbal remedy for depression, for overwhelm. It's also a good anti-bacterial remedy. This is another one that I bought. Let's just see where I bought this from. This is bilberry. Okay, so it's again from Heavenly Herbs. Is that what it's called? Heavenly Herbs. That's right, Heavenly Herbs. You see, it's been a while since I've bought herbs because I did have a big garden in Australia, and I harvested a lot of those herbs, dried my own herbs. And see if you can see, I've got my feverfew. My feverfew again, which is great for migraine headaches. Really good anti-parasitic as well. Here's lesser periwinkle. The writing's disappearing, but yes, I got lesser periwinkle there. I've got mugwort. I've got chamomile. I got this from my own chamomile plants. Chamomile's not very easy to grow because a lot of insects like chamomile, and that's also why when you drink chamomile tea, make sure it's organic, because the only way they can harvest the most from chamomile is to use pesticides, because it really gets a lot of insects. If you have it in your own garden, then it's easier for you because you're only using a small amount for your personal use to get rid of the insects and not have to use pesticides. So this is thyme. Thyme is something that's so easy to grow in the garden, and again, I've dried a fair bit. I had borage. So you can collect your own herbs, and you can dry them, put them aside, use them for tea for when you actually need it. I've got a little guide here, and it's a booklet that I've had since, maybe 18 years ago. And it gives me a list of all the different herbs for all the different ailments. And as you hear videos like this or read books, make your own list, because it's really important to know and remember what each herb is for. So for example, if I wanted to create something for the family for flu, I would usually use peppermint. So some of the recommendations are peppermint, lemon balm. Lemon balm, again, so easy to grow. It's like peppermint, it just proliferates in the garden. I would always put yarrow, as you saw there. And again, that's good for influenza, for the flu, for infection, for acute infections. Mullein is a good one to add. Elderberry, Andrographis, as I mentioned earlier. Astragalus is also another one that's good to add. Echinacea. Again, if you're planting your own herbs, you can use either the flowers or the roots or even the leaf. You can use the whole plant. So depending on how big your garden is, it will dictate which ones you're harvesting. The root is the strongest part and the most potent part of the plant. But I've used everything. I've used the flower, I've used the leaves, and I've used the roots. Garlic, I don't really like garlic, so I don't use garlic a lot. What else? Lime flowers. Vervain is another one that wormwood. Wormwood is a really good herb. It's a bush that you can grow. The good thing with wormwood and feverfew is they actually get rid of mosquitoes. Get rid of some of the flying insects. Insects don't like them because of the way they smell, but again, they're really good to have in the garden because you can use them. They're good anti-parasitics, and they're good for flu and for infections. When you have an infection, your gut isn't well. When you take an anti-parasitic, it just clears up your gut of whatever it is that you might have collected. If you have too much bad bacteria in your gut, wormwood and feverfew helps with that. If you are trying to fight infection, I would always suggest having some ginseng in what you're drinking. But ginseng isn't so easy to get. So if you can't get ginseng, Andrographis is a good one. Astragalus is a good one. Cat's claw, echinacea again, and withania. So there's a lot of different herbs for different things. And it's good to just have a list. So, for example, in this tea that we've created, I've got rosemary, I've got peppermint. Peppermint, again, is a great antiviral, antibacterial. I have yarrow here, again, great for the blood, cleaning the blood. But I would like to, for example, put mullein. Mullein, again, is very good for the flu, and I have it here. Here's my mullein. I've got the name on top. So there you go. So we'll just get some mullein and we add it into our tea. So I've cut up this mullein. Again, clean hands, because you don't want to infect the whole container. So I'm not putting a lot. Again, see, that's all I'm putting in. Mullein is quite fluffy. The leaves of mullein is very fluffy. And I have to say, for those of you that live in Canberra, the best and easiest way to get mullein without having to spend $1 is to go and walk on Mulligan's Flat. It grows up the top of the hill in Mulligan's Flat. I can't remember what time of the year I usually go and get it. I think this time of the year would be good just before winter sets in, and you'll find a lot of herbs. If I'm not mistaken, this time of the year in Canberra is also when it kind of rains a bit, so you'll see the herbs in bloom. You know, there's gonna be a lot of herbs there. Hey Tita Dimple, how are you? Hey Esme, hey Raymond, kamusta na? So yeah, so again, these are just herbs that I either grew, I picked up, didn't have to buy anything. So grow your herbs, grow your plants. It's the best way to keep your whole family healthy, especially during this epidemic. But you know what? Whether or not there's an epidemic, you will always have to protect your children's immune system. You know, protecting your family isn't difficult. It's only difficult when you don't have the protocols in place and you have to create the rules. Once you've done it, it's easy. Everyone knows what to do. Everyone knows what to follow. And once you learn how to create your own remedies from home, it's easy to make sure that everyone's healthy. So something like this, I would recommend that you have every day. Have a tea, a healing tea every day. Use different herbs. If you only have a handful, then maybe rotate it. Don't mix the herbs all the time. I would probably have my peppermint days and my rosemary days and my yarrow days. If I didn't have a lot of herb enough, I only planted 3 herbs in my garden. If you don't have a lot of herbs, again, buy from the shops. So do a theme. So have a day where you're just having, let's just say, parsley and thyme and rosemary. Parsley is great for the bladder, for the kidney. It's great for the immune system, for your digestion. Thyme is really good for sore throats, for coughs. So if someone's got a cough, put thyme. Thyme's really good for that. Oregano is an amazing herb. You can put for colds, for cough, for anything really. Oregano is like the natural antibiotic in our family, and I've said this before. So you can either have the oregano drops that you buy from the shops, or again, grow the oregano and just get a small handful, put it in a tea, and your kids will be protected. Their immune system can be built up and they can get rid of the cough and the cold and whatever it is that they have. Other easy herbs, thyme, oregano. Dill is another herb for the digestion. Again, easy one to grow. Coriander is a really good one to have in your garden as well. So see, a lot of these herbs which we use for cooking aren't just for cooking. They're also herbs that are great for your immune system and for keeping your family healthy. If you have a more adventurous side and you want to try growing other herbs, try and grow as many as you can. But I would always start off with the cooking herbs. Because again, remember, make medicine your food and food your medicine. So if you can put your fresh herbs into your cooking, then you're already one more step ahead of everyone else in boosting your immune system while you're eating good food. Alright guys, thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you want to learn more about the herbs and how to create your own herbal extract, so like your own remedy drink, stay tuned tomorrow because we'll talk about that tomorrow. Have a great day, and please do share your thoughts because that's the only way I know if you're understanding what I'm saying. Hello Patito, apa kabar? And if you've got questions or clarifications, let me know. I'm also going to put in the link below the link for my membership site. On my membership site, I do teach you specific herbal mixes and herbal remedies that you can use. I did mention a few here. Really, it's not rocket science. If you're making a tea, you can mix up as many of the different leaves as you want, and it will work for you beautifully. All our plants are medicinal. They all have a purpose. They all help you get better. You just have to use them. Have a great day. Bye.